1886, only 100 years ago, the man Converse dressed the loom upon which the town of Malden would weave its future. It was woven with his treasure. It was woven with his dreams. The fabric of his legacy continues in the greatness of his vision, his ideas, and his enduring spirit.
I received a letter from Alexander today. He has agreed to a trial of his newest machine. It is called the telephone. He will place a telephone line from my factory in Boston directly to the Boston rubber boot factory in the Edgeworth section of Malden. This machine transfers voices for distances of 6 miles and more along a series of wires. These wires are strung on tall poles. If it works, other men of commerce may decide to try it. Though some think the idea foolish, I shall invest some money and hope for a meager return. Alexander's very reputation rests upon its acceptance.
Alexander Graham Bell's experiment was highly successful, and we here in Malden, Massachusetts well know the benefits of the meager return on Elijah Slade Commerce's investment. My name is Jim Conway, and I am the 29th mayor of the city of Malden. The year is 1986, and we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Converse Memorial Building, which is known as the Malden Public Library. When Mayor Converse served as Malden's first mayor in 1880, the library was housed in the corner of the town hall on Main Street. It took up but a small space and contained 3,600 volumes. After Elijah and Mary Converse suffered the tragic loss of their son, Frank Eugene, at the age of 17, they turned their grief to a gift of life. They commissioned the great American architect, Henry Hobson Richardson, to plan this magnificent structure, housing books and works of art. This library, Fellsmere Pond, Pine Banks, the Bell Rock Hill and Edgeworth areas, Spot Pond, the Baptist Church, are what has made Malden a beautiful city to live in for 100 years. Our first mayor's plan for the town of Malden has been firmly implanted. His ideas for how people in ordinary circumstances can enjoy beautiful areas has come to fruition. Ms. Dina Maljury is the 5th librarian in 107 years to serve the community.
The year was 1886. The great American experiment was about to begin. Elisha Slade Converse was in the vanguard of American industrialists. He was an American original, the very embodiment of what was to become known as the American dream. He began as a tailor whose wife took in boarders. Later, he became a partner in a dry goods business, and then he came to the Boston Rubber Company. Sneakers, rubber shoes, and boots are today part of everyday footwear. But in 1845, at the time Mr. Converse established the Boston Rubber Shoe Company, they were an experiment. There were skeptics who regarded making rubber shoes unsound from a business standpoint. Mr. Converse had both the courage and the insight to work successfully against great odds. He was a true industrial pioneer. He became a supplier of footwear to the Union Army during the Civil War. When he started the enterprise, Malden was a country village of only 4,000 people. As business boomed, Mr. Converse helped put together the Edgeworth Land Development Company, which built the houses, put in the streets, and planted the trees in the area now known as Ward 2. Those who lived in these houses were workers in the Boston Rubber Company. During this period, they produced 50,000 pairs of boots a day. Frank Eugene Converse was a beautiful and treasured son. At age 17, he was working as a teller in his father's First National Bank. He was the son of a self-made millionaire, born in the rarefied atmosphere of freedom, opportunity, and wealth. A new, untried world was out there waiting for him when he was shot to death in the country's first bank robbery murder on December 15th, 1863. 22 years later, in 1885, a stone building was dedicated in his memory by his parents to be used by the people of the city of Malden as a free library and museum. The Converse Memorial Building is the crown jewel of the many gifts given by Elisha Converse and his family. Mary Diana Converse's 1903 $15,000 gift to establish an art fund has made possible this magnificent collection. It was a remarkable act for a woman of her time and an amazing gift. The Converse family, who were they that they stamped their identity and ideas so well and so wisely upon this fortunate community? We can only surmise and reconstruct the details of their lives, but we know them well in a time frame far from the actual times they lived. They teach us to understand how our actions today affect the future life of this community. While many fine buildings were built and demolished during the past 100 years, this building remains, thanks to the Converse Trust Funds, the Board of Trustees, and the many individuals who contributed and continue to contribute each year. I see this library as a living, enduring memorial to a young man forever gone, and as a vigorous entity for the many people who benefit from this gift daily. It's possible that the building was imposing in its size at first, larger perhaps than the people had ever known a building to be. Now, 100 years later, it is the very soul of the city. It is part of all our lives, and we all are part of it. And so the spirit of Mary, Frank, and Elisha Converse lives on in us.
Long before I ever entered the library, even as a small child, I knew this building was a most beautiful thing. I was too young to have a definition of beauty, but in my heart, I knew what beauty was long before my mind caught up with the idea. I was 6 years old. The year was 1933. It was a shimmering day of Indian summer as I stepped from waves of dancing heat into deep pools of shadow. It was then that I saw him for the first time. He was seated on the landing where the stairway leads to the gallery. The gate was open. In the quiet of the foyer, the summer world fell deep into the stream of silence. He turned. His eyes were blue as cornflowers, and I felt calmed by his welcoming presence. And when I reached out to touch him, he was gone. A silent voice, a boy is gone. The soul and spirit rise at dawn.
After the tragic death of our son, Mrs. Converse and I decided to plan a fitting memorial. It would be a gift, giving a library and gallery from which the people of Malden could benefit. I called the leading architect of the day, Henry Hobson Richardson. Before we selected a site, he suggested consulting with Frederick Law Olmsted, the first professional landscape architect in America, who at the time was working on Central Park in New York. Olmsted was a great humanitarian, and he wearied of the politics of Tammany Hall and of its insensitivity to the needs of city dwellers for pastoral relief. Richardson persuaded him to put aside these anxieties and come visit him in his home in Brookline, Massachusetts. It was a fine spring day when the unlikely-looking pair rode a horse-drawn carriage past the woods and waterways of Boston's forested areas. Richardson was a huge man of great girth, and he towered over the tiny Mr. Olmsted. Though physically incongruous, they were creatively compatible. When they returned from the drive, Olmsted had sketched the paths and the ponds that were to become the famed Emerald Necklace of Boston. The Arbor Way, the Fenway, the Jamaica Way were thus conceived. They told me about it, and the idea of a Fells Way emerged. It was heartening to hear the recommendations of men whose architectural and landscape designs would lift the spirits of people in New York, Boston, and Malden by focusing on forms of nature compatible against a backdrop of the Industrial Revolution. I told them of my urgent need for a water supply in addition to Spot Pond. We had already had one disastrous fire, and with 40 buildings now in Malden and Melrose, I needed a reservoir. Olmsted suggested creating one in the wooded area of West Malden.
I'm Florence Burns. I serve as president of the Board of Trustees of the Malden Public Library. Conjecture leads us to believe that Olmsted may indeed have chosen the site for the reservoir. The similarity between the Emerald Necklace of Boston and the Fellsway in Malden is striking. With the reservoir there, Fellsway East is considered one of New England's finest scenic views during all seasons. But at foliage time, it is spectacular.
It was in the year 1899, during the 250th anniversary of the town, that the reservoir received its record turnout. Yes, Fellsmere Pond was the mecca of many. It was here that the contests on the water were held, single and tandem canoe races providing entertainment to the multitudes on shore, the maidens especially enjoying the accidents that befell the paddlers. Several contestants, in their eagerness to win a prize, lost their balance and pitched headlong into the lake. There followed the swimming struggles to prove the excellence of the nattators.
When Mr. Converse originally bought the piece of land, now known as Pine Banks, it was used as a park for his family and friends. Reference is made to it on the occasion of Malden's 250th anniversary in 1899. I quote, "The golfers had fun all to themselves in a very quiet, respectable sort of way on the Converse Links at Pine Banks. The general public as yet not having been educated up to anything more golfy than tees and tea caddies." Yes, Malden was becoming a city of class distinction. The rich, the growing middle class of first-generation Americans, and the immigrant population who were America's poor. Mr. Converse was aware of the changes. Malden did not have a hospital. He thought that the people of Malden deserved one. He bought the original site at the corner of Appleton and Main Street with his own funds. He presented it to the community. Malden needed a YMCA. Mr. Converse contributed half and began a matching gifts opportunity. He founded and built the first cultural center in the city, Malden Auditorium. He saw the need for concerts, cultural entertainment, and a meeting place to achieve all of this for the town. He went ahead and provided it. Pine Banks was presented to Malden and Melrose by the Converse family after Mr. Converse's death, and like its smaller counterpart, Fellsmere Pond, it had become a woodland gem in the midst of its still growing population. Obviously, Mr. Converse had been influenced by his English heritage and the public humanitarian philosophy of Olmsted. Their belief to provide tranquil wooded areas which offered the greatest possible physical and visual contrast with the city. They believed in the restorative value of rural scenery, the tranquility it provided workers overbent in intellectual and business pursuits.
I next saw him in September 1938. The great hurricane which felled our mighty trees was almost upon us. As the wind picked up, the ivy clung tightly to the sandstone wall. I watched the leaves blow clear round as mounting gusts stripped them one by one from clinging vines. I was afraid. I ran from the eye of the storm into the library. The room was golden, glowing, lit by the strange currents of great storms. The library seemed empty. I entered the doorway leading to the old book stacks. It was then that I saw him for the second time. He was standing there among the books. He turned. His eyes were blue as cornflowers, and while I listened to the gathering storm, I was calmed by his welcoming presence. I reached out to touch him, and he was gone. I would not see him again for 40 years. 100 years in vaulted domes, the soul's alive, its spirit home. All through the years, the spirit soars, a bird aloft, its treasure stored.
This library is Malden's center of communication. It mirrors the essence of the city. In it, there is no room for selfish interests, whether of individuals or groups. In 1885, when Elisha and Mary decided to give this building as a gift to the city, it was because, in their words, the library will benefit the larger number of citizens. We continue to keep faith with their vision. This city, founded by English settlers, a haven for freed and escaped blacks, later welcomed the Irish, Scandinavian, Italian, Canadian, and Jewish immigrants, as today it welcomes the Asians and Hispanics. The new immigrants, after settling, made their way to the library and found materials of their own culture, as well as those which taught them their new country's language and customs. Their children and great-grandchildren come here today. The influence of Elisha Slade Converse continues to shape our existence to this year, 1986.
I've watched the many changes in Malden over the years with great interest. The library and the gallery are all that I hoped for and more. The Sunday concert series remained after the glorious bicentennial and joined the Robinson Lecture Series as cultural gifts of the library to the community. Yes, I've watched the comings and goings of the generations, the young and old, the homeless and forlorn, the poets and art critics, international connoisseurs of art, who find Malden an unlikely but somehow appropriate place for a magnificent art collection. Students from public and private institutions, readers and writers, all are made welcome here. Malden is like most growing cities. The streets of the original town remain unchanged over the centuries. Beyond these streets are the new apartments, office buildings, factories. Important as they are to the commerce of the city, they seem to lack the charm and interest of the 19th century edifices. It is for this reason, I think, that the library enjoys an increasing number of visitors each year. People sense that the sounds of the modern world do not penetrate within its walls. Here, in the heart of the city, we are miles away, in rooms carved and molded to create a mood of quiet study and reflection. The rooms open into each other. The open spaces are vast. The peace and silence in the late afternoon when the sun starts to set are truly impressive. Most thrilling to the observant visitor are the archways, the spiral staircases, the stone carvings, letters, faces, scrollwork, geometric designs. The legacy of this building is revealed in its full intensity. It remains as a stepping stone into the future.
Like the phoenix rising from the ashes, the grief of Elisha and Mary Converse rose to fill this once empty piece of land. The treasury of books enriching the mind and bringing the whole world of literature to the people of Malden would have been gift enough. The beauty of the hand-carved molding and furniture Richardson sketched in detail and Davenport created would have been gift enough. The great fireplace and marvelous dome, the nooks and crannies would have been gift enough. The opportunity of rising to new plateaus of learning would have been gift enough. But the crowning jewel of all of this is the world-acclaimed Rer Gallery, this magnificent collection of art made possible by the endowments of Mary Diana Converse. This gallery features Jean Mallet, Frank Benson, J.M.W. Turner, and Winslow Homer's famed Whitland Boy, which, when stolen by art thieves in 1975 in a daring robbery, was recovered by Harry Reinhertz, then president of the Board of Trustees. Each of these gifts continues to unfold the spirit of remembrance. All of us remember the Converse family, our benefactors, on the occasion of the 100th anniversary of our Converse Memorial Building, given in memory of Frank Eugene Converse.
Walking through a snowfall of memory in the blizzard of February 1978, I saw the library walls catch the snow as it fell, its rose hues glimmering through the snow dust of the storm. The walls change color with the light and with the seasons, and shades of amber abound in spring and autumn, and summer rains draw their own palette of color. But in the winter, in the snow, it is magical in its beauty. The faces on the tower were shrouded now, peering through mirrors of ice. Sweet, smoky logs burning in the great fireplace mingled with the sweet aroma of white oak that scents the foyer. I knew he would be there. I could feel a strange energy in the room, fueled by the currents of 100 years of storms. The room seemed empty. It was then that I saw them, revealed in the winter light, both father and son, standing on the balcony. Frank Eugene knew I was there, waiting. He turned. His eyes were blue as cornflowers, and as I listened to the sound of the gathering storm, I was calmed by his welcoming presence in this peaceful place. 40 years had passed. He remained the boy, unchanged by time. I reached out to touch them, and they were gone. I closed my eyes to cover my deep sadness. I could hear a faint melody begin to fill the emptiness of the great room. It was the sweet, innocent voice of the spirit that had been silent for 100 years.
A silent voice, a boy is gone. The soul and spirit rise at dawn. 100 years in vaulted domes. The soul's alive, its spirit home. All through the years, the spirit soars up and aloft its treasure store. If a tree grew from a rock, would leaves be green? If a tree grew from a rock, what would it mean? That life is endless in its themes, that our spirit lives and dreams through the years, all through the years. Oh, the spirit soul was restless in the tree. Bound in rock, its strength remains eternally. We see the spirit soul at last, setting free the dream it cast through the years, through the years. The spirit lives, the spirit lives, the spirit lives, the spirit lives all through the years. Oh, the spirit has a voice, it can be heard, where the shadow and the light dance with the bird, where it trills along the vine as the spirit soars and climbs. Hear it sing, hear it sing, hear it sing, hear it sing, hear it singing its own song. Oh, hear it sing. Oh, the spirit's in his home, we see him there, at the twilight and the dawning, everywhere. The spirit singing its own song, singing where the spirit longs, longs to be, longs to be. Oh, hear it sing, hear it sing, hear it singing its own song. Oh, hear it sing, hear it sing, hear it sing, hear it singing its own song.